What's good, people? It's Jagilsdorf coming back at you with another Rhythm Roulette style tutorial type video. Today's going to be more of like a beat breakdown rather than like a step-by-step showing you as I go. I'm going to just show you what I did. So let's get right into it here. Let's go over into Logic and see what we got. Now, again, I know it always looks like a mess when we first start. But let's see where I went with this. Now, this is actually the original sample that I used. I know a lot of the times I don't tell you guys what my original sample was, and it's just really nice because it just has like some nice, really piercing vocals in there. It's already got like a little bit of reverb on it, so it's kind of hard to work with, but at the end of the day, it was a good sample because it's an acapella. By picking a minor song, I can shift it to a major key, and then make it, you know, a little bit of a happier vibe, and because I do that, it disguises the beat better, and makes it hard to find the original, like hard to hear the original sample in my song. You want to make a major beat, and you already know that off the top of your head, because I love making my JagHop style music major beats. Like, that's the whole style behind it, is to be uplifting and really like summer vibes, Dyalla, Andrew Apple Pie, Brock Berrigan style, Casey Neistat video type jazz, you know. That's what I go for. So to achieve that, I love using minor samples and then turning it into a major key. C major is A minor. So it's F major. So if I think in my head where F major is on the guitar and I bring it back, that would be D minor. So the song was actually D minor, and then I made mine in F major. Sorry for the music theory. I'm not a huge fan of going too deep into it. I like listening rather than calculating, I guess. But it does help. It does help a lot. So first things first was I just got my chops, you know. Go-to plugin for my chops. I know that the new Logic sampler system's nice and all, but I just don't like it. I mean, first of all, I already paid for this, so I'd like to get my money's worth. I guess it's more or less just because I know how to use Shoutout, and I don't really know how to use the other one. But it's preference at the end of the day. It looks like these are the same. Yeah, so these are the same chops, so it doesn't really matter which one I use. Oh, it's just perfect. Pitch it down to, whenever you grab your sample, always pitch it almost immediately. You don't want to start playing around with it and then pitch it later, because you're not going to like that change. Always pitch it first, then start messing around with your chop. So I will start playing around, and then what ends up happening is, like always, I'll come into the actual section. So that's kind of what I would play around with, and I recorded that. And then I would come into the section itself and really clean it up. I almost always will quantize, and then I'll come in and I'll trim it up and I'll change it into whatever I want, which ended up turning into this. And I really liked that, so I duplicated it and I put it at the beginning of the song, added like some echo to it, and then filtered it out so it's just really, really like dry per se. And it's just kind of like chopped up more. So after you always get your chops, like chop it up again, you know, bounce in place and then use that as your chops. I think actually before I even did my chops, I played along to a sample. And that's what I played to when I chopped it up. So I always try to like drag in like another sample or something from Apple Loop's library that'll give me like a bass line or some sort of melody to work with. I'll end up not using it. A lot of the times I love grabbing samples or grabbing something and then not using it at all, because then you can't tell what, like where I came from. So I'll make a sample, build a whole song around that, and then remove the original sample and replace it with something new, and you won't even know what my original was because it's not even in the final mix. And I'll show you what I mean by that, because like you can't hear that piano that I just played to you. And I wrote the melody to that piano line. Then I just created like a bass line based off of that feature, or that like sample that we just used. Took like an art bass, you know, got some mids, took an analog sub to get some really lows, and then I got the slap bass to get some really high end, like really get that twang going on. Then I just bounced that in place to get a single already mixed down bass line. Really helps keep your CPU low when you do stuff like that. And then I use the hide tool just by pressing H, so that if I do want to go back to that MIDI, I can change it later, but there's only one instance of it, and then it's muted. I could probably even freeze it and go back and do stuff like that to, again, compensate for CPU, because I'm the type of person to have Chrome open and Final Cut open and sometimes even Photoshop and Audacity, and I'm screen recording right now, like, and I'm still, you know, no CPU problems at all. So CPU is always important, no matter how good your computer is. But nevertheless, the next thing that I did was I added like a chorus group, and I made this amazing sounding chorus sample here. You can hear my CPU starting to cut out and just chop up when I play that. Then I threw in, you know, drum break, just timed it. Threw in another drum snare, timed that up. Oh, I took that choir that we just played, and I bounced it in place, and then I put it into Shoutout to chop that up. And that just makes it sound a little bit more sample based, which is what I've been talking about all the time, is just make your song, resample yourself. Make your song, resample yourself. And just keep going through that all the time. Then once I was done, it was just kind of empty, you know? I was like, that's not enough. Even the chorus is just not really bouncy enough. Like, it's got the elements it needs, but it's not full. So I came in and I added some a melody pluck using my guitar, and what I do is I'll record 8 bars, I cut it at the 4 and divide it in half. This is the loop that I recorded. I cut it here, bring this over here, and then loop that as a whole. And that allows me to have essentially two different samples that I just recorded in one take, and now I have 2 4-bar loops that are slightly different. And then I'll pan them to both sides, threw some bus reverb on that, and then echo, and then just EQ'd it to kind of take out some of the highs and take out some of the lows, just to kind of put it in more of a midsection melody plucks is what I called them. Then I made Ambient Plucks, which, you know, doing very similar methods, not the same, but similar. In this instance, what I did was I used a sample delay to kind of pan them, to make each one a little bit more stereo. So instead of doing it the way I just showed you. And these are just kind of like me just grooving on the guitar, nothing special, and each one's a little different, so. And if you look at the waveform, you can see what I did here. So very similar to how I have it, you know, different tracks on different ones. You have this take right here and this take right here, and then I switched them. This one's going up to this bar, and then this one's coming down to this track. So now when they loop, they're not just straight loops, and you can tell that just by looking at this transient and how it doesn't appear here, and then it's right here, and it's right up here, and they kind of zigzag across my tracks, so that it's never just like every time you hear that one guitar riff, it's always panned to the right ear. No, I want it to kind of divide up, and I suppose I could do that with my melody plucks as well. So every so often I could like delete these and put this one up here and put this one down here, because they're technically, those are 2 different takes. and then it would kind of spice it up a little bit. Then the next thing I did was I added like some 16th note plucking going on here. And then I EQ'd that to just get that high end. Put a tremolo on it to really take out some of the transients. And it also kind of quantizes it a little bit through the reverb on. And then I just used a gain control so that this didn't have to be like negative, what is it, like 10. I kind of like my master gain knobs to be close to 0, so that's like a final tweak rather than having a bunch of things that are like this down here. This electro riser's negative 15. That's only because there's only one track on there. It was like the last thing I added just for a little extra oomph. So I was just being lazy with it, but typically when I'm mixing in like a main instrument, I love to use the gain rather than just using this master fader here. It's just preference. Fades just all over just to make the whole thing mix better. You know, the verses are gonna have a different thing, and then the rest of the song's not. You always use the arrangement because you can literally click Alt and just drag a section over, and you can copy that over and over. So this chorus is just a direct copy of that, and then this intro was this is a direct copy of this intro, and then I just changed the automations to kind of mirror it so that it kind of ends the same way it begins. So this last second sounds just like this first second, so you can have an infinite loop, because a lot of this music's designed for my YouTube channel, and I want to be able to loop this song like 500 times if I wanted to, and it's only 1 minute and 46 seconds, so now I can have a short song for Spotify for people to enjoy, but now I can have a infinitely long loop for my YouTube channel, so it's a win-win. Always have to add like a master automation at the beginning and the end of your loop to make sure that there's no clicks or pops. I just put negative infinity as close as I can to that edge. Very, very important step in my opinion. It avoids clicks and pops. Altogether, that guitar section just sounds amazing on that hook. Bass, choir, and I could leave that song as is. I can literally not have the original Ariana sample in the song at all, but I can still keep it in there because it's so obscure that I don't think anyone's going to really notice unless I told you. So for that second verse, or first verse really, I wanted the ambient plucks to come up and I wanted everything to come down because I really wanted to give the ambient plucks a chance to be heard. Another thing I did as kind of like a little added bonus was I added this high shelf gain on my master track, something that I've never really done before, so that during the hook there's just this extra little high-end boost, and I noticed that it just really brings the mix together like so much better because there's not like a vocal track or anything in this. If there was, I could just bounce this whole project out and put it into a new, and then add like a verse to it if I wanted someone to like sing or rap over it. This way it wouldn't affect their sibilance at all. But because there's not a lot of high end in this beat, I wanted to like add that extra oomph. If I turn that off, know. And I always cut at like the between 30 and 40 hertz, just because it just ends up being really muddy if you don't. I highly recommend putting like a really sharp roll off right there, because stuff still comes through. Like look at this master multimeter. It's a roll off. It's not a hard cut at the 30, so you'll still get some 30 hertz coming through, but you won't get like 16 hertz, which, like, who in their right mind is going to be playing your music out of a subwoofer that can produce that low of frequencies? Like, not the majority of your fans. I can like guarantee you that the majority of your fans are not going to be able to listen to your music. They'd love to, they would really enjoy it, but they're not going to be able to. And the thing is if you look at the multimeter, my low end is the highest noise in here. If we just put it at an infinite hold, you can see that low end is the highest, and it trails down towards it. And that, you should have a nice curve like that. That's a pretty okay curve, but you have to realize that if you have too much low in like your 16 to 30 hertz range, most people aren't going to hear that, and then when you bounce this out and your normalizer goes off, it's going to set that as the peak. And I mention this all the time. Connor actually showed me that. He's just like, dude, just roll off like way up here. And I'm like, why? Like, I want that low end. And he's just like, yeah, but no one's going to be able to hear that. The only reason why you do is because you have nice enough speakers to catch it. The normalizer will cause your whole beat to sound like way lower. You can check out my subwoofer video if you want to know more about that. But yeah, like at the end of the day, like this is just one of my favorite mixes that I made in a while. Really gives that JagHop vibe that I was looking for, and exactly what I was saying, where I could just take out that OG sample that I was using and not include it at all, and it would still sound like a very nice original track. So sometimes starting with a sample just to remove it anyway is a really awesome way to like make a beat. The way I do my sidechaining, you can also check out my sidechaining video, where anything I want to get sidechained to, I actually change the output to bus 30. I don't know why bus 30, it's just what I decided to do. And instead of doing a send, you just click this output, typically it'll say stereo out, you just change it to bus whatever, and then on that bus I put a compressor that's linked to a kick, that all it is a kick, and then you just mute it and it'll still respond. If we click any one of the things that are sidechained, you'll see the compressor triggering based off of the MIDI of this kick here. So yeah, that is essentially the mix. That is the final version of Savage. I wanted to call it something relatively related to the original sample being Dangerous Woman, so I was saying Savage. I literally just googled dangerous synonyms and I saw Savage. I'm like, that's it. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy this song. Check out these videos right here and subscribe right about here. Make sure you don't miss another video by clicking the little notification. Oh, and before I let you go, I just want to say one more thing about